The chapel was silent when she walked in. The kind of silence that presses against the walls and makes every footstep sound wrong. Hours later, the same church would become the center of a crime so unsettling investigators struggle to describe it aloud. No one inside that campus knew it yet, but this was the beginning of a story too disturbing for television crime dramas. Across the world, some cases stay frozen for years. Files gather dust. Evidence sits in boxes. And the truth waits until a breakthrough finally pulls into the light. Sometimes it's DNA that should never have survived. Sometimes it's a device no killer expected to betray them. And sometimes the twist is so sharp, investigators have to rebuild the story from the ground up. These are cases too disturbing for Netflix to touch. Top 10 cold cases with shocking twists. Every case you'll hear in this video involves real people and real losses. There are no reenactments, no exaggerations, and no graphic descriptions. Only the facts, the investigation, and the moment everything changes. Some of these stories end with justice. Some end with answers no one wanted. All of them carry a twist that push the truth out of the shadows. Viewer discretion is advised. And stay with me until the end, because the final case will change how you think about ordinary neighborhoods and the people who live in them. Case number 1, the murder of Chandra Levy. A missing intern, a media storm, and a conviction that fell apart. By May 2001, Washington, D.C. was already used to secrets. But when a 24-year-old intern vanished without a trace, the capital's usual whispers turned into a roar. Chandra Levy had moved to Washington full of ambition. She was finishing an internship with the Federal Bureau of Prisons, living alone in a modest apartment and planning her next steps. On May 1st, she checked her email, searched online for information about Rock Creek Park, and then, as far as the record shows, walked out her building and disappeared. She didn't come back. When Chandra's parents in California could not reach her, worry turned into panic. Calls went unanswered. Messages were not returned. Eventually, D.C. police were contacted and a missing person report was filed. At first, officers treated it like many other disappearances in a busy city. A young adult who might have traveled or left town without telling anyone. But the longer she stayed missing, the stranger became. In her apartment, police found her suitcase, credit cards, and ID. Her phone was not active. There was no sign of a struggle, no obvious sign she had packed to leave. The one real clue was digital. That search for Rock Creek Park on her computer shortly before she vanished. At the same time, another detail surfaced that would change how the world saw the case. Chandra had been in contact with a married congressman, Gary Condit. Phone records and interviews suggested a close, possibly intimate relationship. Almost overnight, a missing person investigation turned into a political scandal. Reporters camped outside Condit's home. Headlines framed the story as a secret affair that had ended in murder. Talk shows treated suspicion like proof. Inside the police file, though, there was a problem. There was still no physical evidence tying anyone to a crime. For a year, Chandra's case drifted between active searches and dead ends. Volunteers worked with posters. Her parents gave interviews, begging for answers. Police searched parts of Rock Creek Park, but did not find her. Then, in May 2002, a man walking his dog through a more remote area of the park saw something in the undergrowth. It was a skull. Nearby lay the rest of Chandra's remains. Her clothes and a Walkman were also found. The discovery confirmed the one thing everyone feared. She had not simply run away. She was dead. But even with a body, the path forward was not clear. The remains were badly decomposed. There was no clear cause of death and no obvious DNA pointing to a killer. And while the public suspected the congressman, suspicion is not evidence. Gary Condit denied harming Chandra and was never charged, though his political career was effectively destroyed. For a time, it seemed like the case might stay in that limbo. A body, a scandal, and no proof. Then another name entered the story. Ingmar Guandique was an immigrant from El Salvador, already in prison for attacking 2 women in Rock Creek Park around the same time Chandra vanished. Those attacks were violent, and they happened in the same general area. To many investigators, That sounded like a pattern. Over the next years, detectives revisited files, compared timelines, and interviewed witnesses. A jailhouse informant eventually claimed that Gwandik had confessed to killing Chandra, with growing pressure to solve the case. This was a thread prosecutors chose to pull. In 2009, Gwandik was charged with Chandra's murder. In 2010, he went on trial. There was no direct DNA placing him at the scene. The case leaned heavily on the informant's testimony, the prior park attacks, and the argument that Chandra's search for Rock Creek Park meant she had gone there alone and crossed paths with a predator. After weeks of testimony, the jury returned a verdict: guilty. For many people, that seemed like the end. The media declared the case solved. The name of the congressman faded from the story, replaced by the image of a park stalker now behind bars. But the truth was not finished with this case. As the years passed, defense attorneys and reporters kept going to the trial record. They raised questions about the reliability of the jailhouse informant and whether key evidence had been presented fairly. Slowly, the foundation under the conviction began to crack. In 2015, prosecutors disclosed that the informant's credibility was more questionable than jurors had been told. New doubts about his testimony and concerns over how the case was built prompted a drastic step. Gwandik's conviction was vacated. The man once labeled Chandra's killer stood in court again, this time not for sentencing, but for a second chance. The following year, in 2016, prosecutors dropped the murder charges entirely. They announced that they no longer believed they could prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt at a new trial. The result is a twist that leaves almost everyone unsatisfied. The congressman at the center of the early media storm was never charged. The man who once carried the label convicted killer, in her case, had a conviction undone. And Chandra Levy's murder, despite all the headlines, remains officially unsolved. For Chandra's family, that means more than one wound. They lost a daughter. They watched the world turn her death into political theater. Then they saw the answer. They were taken apart years later, piece by piece. This is the hidden reality of some cold cases. Sometimes, the twist is not a neat reveal of a single villain. Sometimes, the twist is realizing that an entire narrative the public accepted was built on weak evidence, faulty assumptions, and pressure to put a name on a file. Chandra Levy's story is not just about a young woman who vanished on an ordinary day. It is about how power, media attention, and desperation for closure can bend an investigation in the wrong direction. It is about how even a conviction does not always mean the truth has been found. And it is our first reminder in this list that when we talk about cases too disturbing, we are not only talking about what happened in the moment of the crime, but what happened for years afterward, in courtrooms, newsrooms, and behind closed doors.